Hello, students. We are going to be taking your test over responses to genocide and conflict today. And from now on, you'll just be watching the screen and your own test. So here we go. Go ahead and here's a trick. Actually read, um, go through and look at A and try to match it up over here versus going the other way. But I'm going to read it as number one. Actually, sorry, I'm going to read all the answers, possible answers first, and then I'll read the questions. So A says, an action by one or more countries towards another country to force it to comply with legal obligations. All right, trying to force another country. B, a group to help countries torn by conflict to create the conditions for peace, only allowed to carry light weapons and to use minimum force. C, the act of settling a dispute between two parties. D, the overthrow of a government by a military force which replaces the authority in an area. E, to publicly express a strong disapproval. F, the headquarters for representatives serving in a foreign country, normally led by an ambassador, who is the representative to the host country. So those are your answers, and your questions are here. Condemn actions, mediation, sanctions, peacekeeping soldiers, embassies, complete military takeover. And you notice you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 answers, 6 questions. You won't use any of them more than once. So as you do this read along, I suggest that you pause, and this is our level 3 questions here. So pause as you need to. But it says select 2 of the following conflicts or genocide. So notice you got one about South Africa, you got one about Colombia, one about Cambodia, another one about Rwanda. Okay, so you got 1, 2, 3, 4 options, and you only have to do 2 of them. Okay, I believe on the board there's even some sentence starters to help you out with these. But here's what you need to do first. Decide what the problem is. Explain the problem. Identify the response being used, and definitely use these vocab words up here to describe those. Identify what it is. If it's peacekeeping, tell how it's peacekeeping. And actually use the word peacekeeping. And then explain why the actions did or did not fix the problem. Use your reasoning there. Okay, use your reasoning. Does it fix the problem? And remember, you might not have exact answers. You could say that it appears that, or it seems like. Okay, you don't have to have exact answers. So I'm going to read through these in order, but go ahead and skip ahead if you want to the section that you're going to do. Or I could suggest, as I suggest, you listen to all of them and then go back and choose the ones that you understand best. Apartheid in South Africa. In 1948, the all-white government leadership of South Africa began enforcing policies of racial segregation called apartheid. Under apartheid, non-white South Africans, a majority of the population, would be forced to live in separate areas from whites and use separate public facilities. Contact between the two groups would be limited. In addition, protesters such as Nelson Mandela were jailed for their speaking out against the system of apartheid. In 1986, the United States, United Kingdom, and Japan refused to trade steel and iron products, agricultural products, food, oil, and other natural resources with South Africa in an effort to speed up the end of apartheid. In 1991, apartheid laws were being removed, and by 1994, South Africa became a fully functioning democratic government free of apartheid. Back in so that was apartheid. Now here's conflict in Colombia. Back in 1964, a rebel group, FARC, started to try to take over the country of Colombia. They kidnapped people and tried to destroy the Colombian government. In 2000, the United States tried to end the conflict by sending in soldiers to help the Colombian government. The rebel group had 25,000 members. 12 years later, the rebel group was only 8,000. Eventually, the two sides agreed to a peace treaty. FARC was allowed to become part of the government, but they had to give up their weapons. Colombia. Cambodia. In 1975, a communist group known as the Khmer Rouge began running the country of Cambodia. In order to control the country, the Khmer Rouge suppressed human rights and committed acts of violence. Cambodians were not allowed to gather outside and have discussions. Also, people in the city were forced to move to the countryside and work more than 12 hours on farms, 12 hours a day. Nearly 2 million Cambodians were killed due to starvation from lack of food, exhaustion from being overworked, or execution because of suspicion of going against the government. The United States President, Jimmy Carter, publicly declared the Khmer Rouge to be the worst violators of human rights in the world at the time. The United States took no further action due to the recent cost of fighting the Vietnam War. The genocide in Cambodia continued for several more years. All right. Next one, Rwanda. Genocide in Rwanda. As relations between Hutus and Tutsis became tense and violent in the United States, UN soldiers sent the United Nations, UN, sent soldiers into Rwanda. These soldiers with blue helmets were ordered to not use their weapons. They tried to help the two sides avoid violence. As the tensions turned into a genocide, 10 UN soldiers were killed. The United Nations pulled out of Rwanda. Only 300 soldiers were left for the entire country. Many refugees were murdered in camps that the UN had been protecting. All right. So those are the level 3s. Remember, you have 4 different readings to use, and you only need to use 2 of them. I'd pause and go back and work through those questions. Level 4. Select one of the above scenarios, so any of those, let's say you do Rwanda, to create an ideal response to the genocide or conflict. So what should have been done? What would be the perfect response of the international community, whether it be the UN, the US, or someone else? Be sure to justify your answer and explain at least 2 reasons why your response would be a better choice.